Back when I first started with Shopify and just e-commerce in general with Google Ads, I used to only stick to the USA market and not sell outside the US. And this unfortunately turned out to be one of the worst mistakes of my e-commerce life, simply because it really limited me to a lot of scale and to a lot of success that I see a lot of other e-commerce brands today achieving with Google Ads. Now, before I go into the exact reasons as to why I actually started selling outside the USA and why so many of my e-commerce brands, including my client e-commerce brands under my Google Ads agency, Euro Marketing, are now outside the US, I want to kind of take a step back and tell you guys exactly why I started within the USA market only and why so many e-commerce store owners still to this day just rely on the US market to get sales with Google Ads. Now, this Shopify store that you see right here on my screen is actually my own Google Ads Shopify store, which I run to this day and test a lot of things before implementing on my clients' e-commerce stores. But the overall results that you see here, about 98% of it was from the USA only. And I say 98% because later on, as I started to realize that I'm making a big mistake not selling outside the US, I started actually launching more campaigns outside the US market. But there's various different reasons as to why I even got into Shopify this way and why my mindset was limiting me within the US market only. Let's start off with the first reason, which was because that's just what everyone else did, especially with Google Ads. Back when I started, there were no real resources out there which could actually teach me about how to scale successfully with Google Ads and e-commerce. And even if there were, they were very limited information. A lot of the information was not even accurate information. So keeping that in mind, I had literally no idea as to whether I should try the USA market or maybe go into a different market right from the beginning. And that kind of kept me in a cage inside the US market, despite struggling to make a good amount of profits, despite struggling to sell my items with Google Ads. And this is something I still see to this day. But another reason which really stopped me from scaling to other countries or just selling in those countries in general was the fear of sourcing products. Because again, like a lot of e-commerce store owners say, sourcing products is one of the biggest hassles if you do it incorrectly with Shopify. And that is true regardless of which country you sell within. And when it comes to selling outside the USA, that becomes an extra hassle because a lot of suppliers now aren't really going to be able to scale with you to these other countries, especially if they're shipping items from China directly. So this becomes one of the biggest issues. Of course, it's not an issue if you find local suppliers within that country, which we'll talk about shortly, but this was just keeping me back from really selling within these other countries. Thing number 3 was I was not really confident that there were other shoppers or enough shoppers within these other countries that were using Google search consistently to do shopping, like with shopping listings or with search ads, etc. And that ignorance of mine really stopped me from scaling further to other countries, whereas I could have made a lot more profits as a result of just selling to these other countries. Next thing that really stopped me was I didn't really realize that it was better to be a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond when it comes to e-commerce and when it comes to Google Ads. Now, here is exactly what I mean by that. So if you are a big fish in a small pond, what that means is in a small country, maybe with a smaller market share or just smaller audience in general, you are the leading source of products. Everybody who goes on Google, searches up something, actually goes on your website to purchase from you directly instead of purchasing from somebody else. That's exactly what being a big fish in a small pond means. If you compare that to the other scenario, which a lot of us are that sell within the US, which is a small fish in a big pond, that just means there's just a lot of audience searching for some product. But in addition to that, there's a lot of competitors selling the same exact products and you. And of course, a lot of these competitors have a lot more bigger budgets, bigger bids, etc. And they're easily able to outrank you. So what happens is you are left dealing with the scraps. You're left getting a small piece of the pie instead of getting the entire pie for yourself. And this really limits the amount of scale that you can be doing with Google Ads, which of course unfortunately happens for everybody using Google Ads within the United States. So these few things, again, were really just stopping me from achieving the best possible results with Google, and I personally didn't want to really scale further because of it. Now, flash forward a couple of years when I started my Google Ads agency, Euro Marketing, and I started handling clients for some of the biggest brands in the world. I came across 2 different e-commerce brands, which literally changed the way I thought about selling to these different countries and actually finding results with them. First brand, which is here on my screen, unfortunately unfortunately, I don't have access to their Google Ads account or their Google Analytics anymore, because this is a brand I actually stopped working with due to sourcing issues that they faced late last December. But this brand called Sephora was a full-on jewelry brand running within Germany only. So this was a full-on German brand, just had a store in their local language. So German was the main language with the store. Everything was in German. And the beauty about this store was it was in one of the most competitive niches out there in the world, which is just jewelry. But here are the results I was able to get this e-commerce client, and why I really kind of changed my entire approach towards selling within different countries, especially with their local languages. So within the time period of basically November 15th to December 15th, not too long, but I was still able to scale this brand to about 40,000 euros in that time period at a 11x ROAS. So we only spent about 3.6k euros, got 830 sales in that time span, just 1 month, and total of 40k euros. And these are really insane results, because similar products I've tried to sell within the US, because it is again a jewelry brand, and I've tried selling similar things in the US with very lower results. In fact, getting a 3x or a 4x ROAS in the USA is considered good for jewelry brands. But in Germany alone, we were consistently able to hit an 11x ROAS, and this time period is just a segment that I was able to get a screenshot of. We were working until late December, which is when sales were still continuing. But this really was the first store which kind of changed the entire way I was looking towards e-commerce with different countries. Simple because I got the idea now that it is entirely possible to get lots of long-term success with smaller markets if you're the big fish in a small pond, which is exactly what Sephora was. Because along with doing Google ads, they were also doing Taboola ads and finding great success with them, and their overall sales were very good at very profitable return on ad spend. So this was the first store which really changed my eyes. Now moving on to the next store, which was actually this British furniture brand Sono, which I've made videos of in the past in January, on which you can check out. But this was one of the most successful brands I've worked with, and one of the most successful brands I've been able to get results for. So from January 1st to January 31st, and we worked a longer time frame with this account, but those are just the results that I was able to get screenshots for. Unfortunately, we had to go our separate ways due to their budgeting issues, but during this 1 month time period, I was actually able to scale this furniture brand to $500,000, which is about 356,000 pounds. And again, it's pounds because this store was running in the UK market only, nowhere else, not in the US, not in Australia, only UK, but at a 7.47x ROAS. Again, pretty insane results. I don't think I would have been able to get similar results if the brand was running in the USA only. But the reason why this brand was finding success is because it had established itself in a smaller pond, which is UK. Now, a lot of people would say UK is a very competitive market, and I would agree with that. But if you compare the population of UK to the USA, the story is a bit different. Of course, USA is much more competitors and more people buying as well. But in general, UK has a smaller audience and smaller number of competitors compared to the USA. But these two brands really changed the way I was looking at doing e-commerce in different countries and actually launching websites in the local language and all of that stuff. So this is when I really got my first initial success and overview of how Shopify and Google Ads can perform in these other countries, which really led me to just starting campaigns in foreign countries for my own e-commerce brands. But I want to take you guys into another account, which is actually an account I'm dealing with as of right now. This account is an account run within mainly the US market. However, recently I have been able to scale this brand, and again, it is a client's brand under my agency Euro Marketing, but we have been scaling this brand to different countries like Australia, Canada, New Zealand, even UAE, etc. But let's look at this brand really quick. So what I want to show you guys is the main reason why I really sell outside the US now. So if we go ahead and rank this by the conversion value over cost, which is the ROAS, which we have a column for right here, and look at the last 30 days, because this month just started when I'm recording this video. So in the last 30 days, we have several different campaigns. These two campaigns at the top are branded search campaigns, so we're gonna really disregard those. Second two campaigns though, these are the shopping campaigns, both of them very good ROAS, 4x ROAS, 2x ROAS. The break even for this is actually a 1.6, so this Shopify store is doing fairly well. Of course, there's ups and downs overall, but since the beginning, the store has been able to perform very well of this month. But these two campaigns that are performing the best right now, if you guess that these are USA campaigns, you would be wrong, because these are actually New Zealand campaigns running these products within New Zealand only. And the amazing thing is, even though there's not a lot of sales, they are the ones bringing the highest ROAS. Again, these sales we would have completely missed out on, and this ROAS we would not be aware of had we not even launched campaigns for them. So in this case, it proved that the running foreign country campaigns is actually good, and the main market here again is USA, but the owner actually lives in the Netherlands. But looking at the second campaign right here, which is actually the third campaign, this is a US campaign only with about 53 conversions in total. Again, a bit higher than these two campaigns right here, more results, but overall the ROAS is just slightly less than 2.0, but still very profitable. This second campaign, also a US campaign with a lower ROAS here, but it has more sales and the most amount of sales in total. And the reason why these ROASs are low is because it's a scaling campaign. Again, as you scale further, the ROAS does tend to drop. This next campaign right here is an Australia campaign. As you can see, not doing the best, but again, these campaigns all have their own time periods when they do well. So for instance, if we look at the last 30 days, we can see that there were time periods when the Australia campaign was getting a 10x ROAS, and in the recent time periods, actually, it has been performing much better. But again, this is going to vary tremendously based on the current situation in the world and based on just the overall market demand, the overall people searching for that product during that time period. And that's why these campaigns are actually good to be launched in different countries. That's because if, for example, tomorrow a USA campaign that you have running starts to slow down, there might be a good chance that the Australia campaign actually picks up because the demand for the products in Australia is actually increasing while the demand in USA for the same exact products is actually decreasing. And that's what I noticed happens time and time again with all of these e-commerce brands I'm working with. If New Zealand starts to pick up, there might be a reason why USA starts to drop, not really related to each other, but that's just what happens. But the good thing is, because another country's campaign is starting to perform better, now I don't really have to rely on just the USA campaign to get me sales, because New Zealand campaign is doing just as well. So that's really where the main benefit of having these multiple campaigns comes into play. But there's a lot of benefits to selling into different countries, but you have to do it the right way. First thing you want to keep in mind if you do decide to kind of expand into these different countries, if you have everything right, is to actually launch a store or launch certain product pages in that local language within that country. For example, if you're trying to sell in Germany, it's much better if your store is in the German language, just because you get to relate more to the local person there, and because of that you will have higher conversion rates. And trust me, a lot of these e-commerce brands have very, very high conversion rates if they're in the local language. So in reality, it doesn't matter what country you choose, just make sure that you have a local language chosen for that given store. And what this is really going to help you do is it's going to help you lead into a more personalized approach within that country. So those people that are shopping with you, not only will they want to trust you more just because you're talking in their language, but also they will want to buy from you time and time again, because a lot of these countries actually don't have very big e-commerce brands which people can consistently go to and shop from in certain niches. So that's where you really kind of stand out of the crowd and you become the go-to source of any given niche. For example, if you're selling jewelry, you want everybody in Germany just buying from you when it comes to jewelry, and they'll only do that if they can connect with you directly, which again leads me to the next point of actually competing with people who sell the same products in that given country. Naturally, you're gonna actually see that there's just lower amounts of competitors in total for that given market in that given country, depending on which country you decide to sell. Of course, if you're trying to sell underwears in the UK, then that might not be too easy, simply because underwears are competitive in the UK and they're competitive basically anywhere else in the world. So at the end of the day, it does depend on your niche and what industry you're in. But naturally, you can definitely count on just bidding lower in these markets where the competition is much lower compared to the other countries. So just be open to the idea that when you enter these different markets, the bids are going to be considerably low depending on, again, what country you're trying to target and also what your products are. But here are a few things to keep in mind when selling outside the US, which I have noticed for my own e-commerce brands as well as my clients' e-commerce brands under my agency, Euro Marketing, which if you're doing $30,000 or more in sales and you want to take your e-commerce brand to the next level with somebody's help, go onto my website at euromarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how we can possibly work together to scale your e-commerce brand. But the first main thing to keep in mind is sourcing is key to finding success in these different countries. If you're unable to source properly or with the right suppliers, or you're using suppliers which are scamming suppliers, you're gonna find it very difficult to find long-term success in these different countries, because definitely there will be limited number of suppliers out there which can actually supply for you, and that too in a good amount of time. So make sure that you get the supplier game on point. You make sure that you have the right suppliers with good reviews that are ready to source for you and have lots of stock available. Which brings me to the next point, which is be sure that the people in that country can actually pay for your products with the local currency. So that means if whatever you're using, like Stripe for example, or PayPal, that it accepts those currencies and there's no big transaction fees. Because a lot of times if you're trying to sell in different countries, there might be different things that affect you, like transaction fees, taxes. Like for example, if you try to sell in the UK, there's something called the VAT taxes, which can impact your ability to sell and get profits long term. So you got to make sure all of those things are on point. But in addition, you want to keep the overall scale within that country in mind. If you try to, for example, target a country like Sri Lanka, which is in complete ruins right now due to what's going on, then number one, you are not going to be able to sell much. But also number two, even if you are able to scale much, because it's basically an island with a limited number of people, there's a limited number of scale you can really get. So if there's only 50,000 people living on an island, you can't force your ad to be shown to a million different people, because that's just, again, not the scale of that country. So always keep the scale in mind, keep your niche and products in mind to really get an idea of whether your niche and product have demand in that country and what that demand is like, and choose a country to sell in where the demand is basically evergreen or a considerable amount, where you can get a good amount of sales long term. But that's pretty much it. As to selling outside the United States, you want to always keep these things in mind. But again, if you're doing over $30,000 or more in sales and you want to take your e-commerce brand to the next level, go onto my website at euromarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how I can personally help you. But if you found any type of value in this video, destroy that like button and destroy that subscribe button, and I will see you in my next video.